You look great.
I like those frames a lot. So just as a quick intro, after some initial success in independent comics, Matt and Kelly kind of made their names in
We only coffee, no one noticed.
As I was saying, Matt and Kelly hit it big working on legacy properties and event books at Marvel Comics. But their biggest early success was elevating some lesser-known characters with an innovative and acclaimed run on Hawkeye from Matt, where he experimented visually and gave us a really grounded take on maybe the least known Avenger. How dare you? And Kelly notably promoted Carol Danvers to Captain Marvel, which really shook up the comics world and created an amazing opportunity for a character. Now, when we talk about comics, Matt and Kelly Sue, of course, are writers, and we're going to talk about these books that they created, that they produced, but of course, none of this stuff happens without the artists. So just for like the sake of ease, we're going to talk about the books that Matt and Kelly created, but none of this happens without the artists that they collaborate with, like Emma Rios and Chip Zdarsky, local Steve Lieber, Gabby Blau, Fabio Moon, Valentin Delandro, Robson Roca. All of these collaborators are essential to everything they do. But just for the sake of ease, I'm just going to talk about Matt and Kelly. So at the end of this, we're going to do a brief Q&A, so please be thinking of questions that you want to ask these guys so that we can...
Really, really easy questions.
All right. And so first off, I just wanted to ask you guys, what brought you to Portland in the first place?
Crime?
Yeah, crime.
All right.
The economic collapse of 2007.
Was 2007 when you moved here?
No, we moved here in 2009, but we lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and we...
Yeah, Kansas.
Kansas City?
No,
It's named for a state it's not in and a river it's not on, guys. Is that not by virtue of creativity?
So we lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and the economic collapse had happened, and our neighborhood was just getting more and more dangerous, and then there was a carjacking that ended on our front lawn.
I had the like Michael Corleone in Godfather moment where he went into the bedroom and was like, put the baby on the floor and lie down on top of him. There were guns in the house. Like, opened up my front door and a cop drew on me and I just kind of Homer Simpson back into the house. Helicopter overhead, like it was like a Grand Theft Auto scenario in our yard.
Super awesome. So we put the house on the market like 3 days later.
2 days after that, had a buyer.
Yeah. It was the guy that rented the car.
Pretty light security around here, I like it. It was the guy who, it was a weird, we were like, it's gonna take us a year to get this house put together and on the market. Like we had talked to a dealer, we had all the plans, we're gonna have to do this, we have to fix that.
Dealer, that's how grown up we are, like house dealers, you know.
Yo, you want a 2 and 2? But we talked to the real estate
dealer.
And it's gonna take us a year to get it in shape, but he met a buyer who wanted exactly that kind of project house, and we were like, great, we will be out of here by July, and we were out of there by July.
Yeah, so it was great, and then but then we were like, well, if we're gonna put all of our stuff in a truck, we don't have to stay here. We don't, like, if you're gonna move, you could move to another neighborhood or you could move to another state. And
it's
so
the same pain in the ass, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
once all your stuff is in boxes and on a truck, it doesn't matter if it's across the street
Wherever.
or across the country. And it was not, there are things you can't teach there.
Yeah.
We had a kid and another on the way and didn't want to have to explain why the chapter about dinosaurs had stickers in it. And, so it's like, let's go somewhere we don't have to apologize for. And we went from being like the freaks kind of the Morticia.
Man, we are gonna get some hate mail from Kansas City. It's gonna be awesome.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
We went from being like the Gomez and Morticia out there to being like Ward and June Cleaver out here. Like, what, you mean you don't barter with weed and hacky sacks to cover your child's Montessori yurt?
So true.
I have a Keep Portland Normal sticker.
Look out, here come the weirdos. Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a way longer answer than you wanted this question.
No,
You're in now, man.
Yeah.
So we went out to dinner and we sat down and we made a list, and it was Austin, Portland, and Seattle. And I had grown up in Austin, and going back felt like going back.
And fuck Seattle.
Yeah.
So you got here. What did you find with the Portland comics community?
Scott's gonna be herding cats for the next 18 minutes and 35 seconds. This is gonna be quick.
You're gonna like it. So you got to Portland, and there was quite a comics community by the time you got here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We had a lot of friends here. We moved from. I lived in Kansas City for 11 years, I think, and had more friends here. You know what I mean? Like it was. It's a bigger city, yes, but just so many people in the industry were here, and there was no. We moved into a very comfortable place where a lot of people that we only saw at comic conventions also lived.
Right.
And now we also only see them at comic conventions.
Yeah, going to the grocery store sometimes is like going to a comics convention because there's such a huge comics community in Portland that you just run into all these people just going to the grocery store often. And in the 90s, that was already happening to a degree, but by the mid 2000s, it was crazy the number of comic book people there were in town, and so you had an entire built-in social network by the time you got here. So you were talking about the economic,
and also to a social network of other creatives. You know what I mean? Which was like a big like there were folks we knew in KC, and but this was like everybody did the same thing we did. It sort of felt like.
Running away and joining the office.
Yeah. It was a very, it was sort of moving into a place where everybody did the same thing, and you weren't the weirdos anymore. I was like, oh, everybody knows what this is like, right?
yeah.
The whole town seemingly knows what this is like.
So you talked about the economic collapse having a role in this, but by then you guys were already very successful at Marvel, right? Like things were really taking.
No.
Okay. Where were you at with Marvel around that time?
I had been on Iron Man for about a year.
Okay.
No, I'd been on Iron Man for like, gosh, or maybe a year, not long. I wrote, yeah, it was. I wrote like issue 20 was the first issue of Iron Man I wrote here in town.
I see. All right.
So,
Why do you remember that?
because I remember that. So no, I had worked in an advertising agency. I went to Kansas City to go to an art school, and a group of us who either graduated or dropped out started a motion graphics and design firm out there. And it became quite successful, in part because Kansas City was very easy to live on $4. It was sort of what we had. You didn't pay, New York overhead. I'll get it. And it was easy, and we thrived. And also, I think, to kind of steer things back creatively, being in the middle of nowhere, we didn't go out and hang out with people who were bidding on the same jobs we were. We were able to kind of creatively develop a bubble. When I left the company, I sold my piece to the other partners. So we kind of had a nest egg of this thing that we had built,
Right.
and that was really
We
Marvel.
made a little money on the house and a little money on the partnership, and
Yeah.
so that floated us.
That-
I wasn't working for Marvel at all. I was
Right.
still doing English adaptations of Japanese and Korean comics.
And was that the majority of your work at that point?
Yes.
And then, 6 months before we came out here, I signed an exclusive, and that was kind of the start of the ramp up. But it was all very we we're still very much in a I hope this works kind of place.
When you started at Marvel, you did some collaborations with Brubaker, right?
Right.
Was that at Marvel or DC?
That was a Marvel.
So Ed Brubaker's a really successful and great comics writer and a great friend of these two.
He was an indie guy that kind of went over to Marvel and had good success, and then killed Captain America and had amazing success. But because he was an indie guy, he was like, well, really, I want to write Iron Fist. And Marvel was like, no, Ed, no, you stay on, focus on Captain America. He's like, but Iron Fist. So they made him bring in a co-writer.
Right.
And so Ed asked Robert Kirkman, who said no. And then Ed asked me, and I said yes. So I had a book and a half, you know what I mean? Like that was my start at Marvel was.
And that was your way in the door there, right?
I had, like, that was like the same week. They had called, Mark Miller got sick when they were making Civil War. And Marvel needed to, the guy who was writing this big Civil War book got very ill and was in the hospital, and they didn't want to do the book without him, so they basically had to invent a quarter of publishing overnight. And that led to a lot of spin-off books and people getting cracks at gigs. And I was one of those people. So I got a Punisher book, and then the next week, Ed asked, well, will you co-write Iron Fist with me? And as far as Marvel editorial was concerned, well, here, Ed was an indie weirdo, and we were able to, corral him. So here, Ed, take this other indie weirdo and corral him as well, and show him, how we do it around here.
Do you feel like that was a mentorship thing? Was Ed mentoring you, or did Ed just help get you in there?
Yeah, no, it was absolutely, sure. As we'll discover over the course of our discussion here, my head is like a cloud of bees, and Ed was able to help, find out what the important bees were, and help me kind of realize, oh, I should talk about those ones. Okay, great. Like I will talk about blades of grass and ignore the yard entirely. So it helps. Yeah, it was all a mentoring process. All of it. Whether or not Ed would ever consider it as such, I certainly do.
Kelly, when you started at Marvel, you also did some, I believe I remember that you did some co-writing. Did you do co-writing with Brian on something? I guess I'm...
No. I know what you're thinking of, Castle. You're thinking of Castle.
Okay.
So I did Castle with Brian, but what that was I had been over at Brian Bendis' house.
Another local.
This guy, he invented Miles Morales. You probably never heard of it. We'd been over at Brian's house, and he came. I was talking to Elisa, his wife, and he came in and had gotten the offer to do the television show Castle, the Castle comics, which, like, in the world of the show would be the comic book adaptations of the novels that that character had written. And Brian was like, should I do this? And we were like, yes, you should do this. Because Elisa and I both enjoyed the show. And then he got like 30 pages into it and was too busy to finish it, and was like, do you want to finish it? And I was like, do you have an outline? And he was like, yeah, totally. And I was like, yes, I will totally finish it. And then he sent me his outline, which was like, cool shit happens.
It's a good writer's note right there. If you're an index card person or an outlining person, the card that says they figure it out, that's not a good card, and you should take that one down. That's a hard and fast rule.
Also for comic book writers, they fight.
Yeah, they fight, not great.
But some of them still give that as the script for the artist, and then the artist just has to do 3 pages of their fight.
Yeah.
But Marvel had had success, though, in more seasoned writers helping co-pilot and letting new kids in. You and I, and like guys like Brian Reed, and I'd have to look at a roster to remember it all. But like there was a kind of, oh, this is how we're doing it. We're gonna bring in new people and kind of.
And it's a good model. But you know who I had co-written with was I had worked with Steve Niles at IDW
On 30 Days a Night.
On 30 Days a Night.
Right. And Matt, you wrote some 30 Days a Night too.
I did, yeah.
Okay. So I want to shift a little bit to some of the obstacles, like especially early in early on, you were talking about the economic collapse, which affected comics pretty severely. Did you find that hit you guys at that point? Comic sales started going down, and they've never really reversed that trend.
Yeah, we were making nothing, so no,
It was like 0 from 0 is 0, you know? Like, all right,
well, we'd been out here 3 years by the time, like, I had seen money from Casanova, which is like the first comic I ever wrote. Like, I was not used to. It was a page rate kind of a gig. You write a script, you send it off, they send you a check. That was, so the royalties weren't a thing yet. You know, it all kind of was.
Yeah.
You guys, I feel that the two of you had a sort of pioneering approach to social media when social media became a bigger and bigger part of how entertainers talk to their audience. And I think, you know, we've seen a lot of weird results from that, but I was impressed with the way that you two engaged with the audience, and it seemed like it really worked. I think I've seen a lot of people in comics devote so much time to social media and watch their engagement increase while their sales just keep going down. But it seemed like you all did something different. How would you say you approached social media in sort of the early days of Twitter?
I mean, I think that, boy, it's hard to look back at that and not see, like, yes, but it's bringing down the republic and education and rational thought, and maybe we should burn it to the ground and it never should have happened. But no, it was great at the beginning. It was a way to build community, I think, was what it was in the beginning. And we met on social media. We met on the Warren Ellis posting forum.
A posting forum, an ad hole into social media kind of doesn't exist anymore, but it was huge for a lot of you, right?
Yeah, and in fact, I think somebody's actually working on a documentary on the Warren Ellis posting forum because so many of our colleagues, so much of our cohort, we were all fans at that point.
There was like a scene that came out there that works in comics now.
And the world of the forum, I mean, I'm very much away from it all, but the world of the forum kind of doesn't exist because it's been
long tweets that didn't scroll away. That's really what I'm trying to think of.
But so, like, speaking of the way that it's lit our country on fire, Matt, you completely stepped away from Twitter, right?
Yeah, I mean, after, because what happens is it happened with Tumblr, and how it'll happen with, TikTok, pick a thing, but when they sell, it becomes a matter of shareholders and profits, and that means they're no longer, any for-profit organization is not interested in protecting people, it's interested in more people.
Right.
And I'm a very different person than my wife, and started to recognize a very different physical reaction. I started to feel unwell. And for a while, your little blue check mark was like a deputy's badge, and you could help sheriff the neighborhood. And you could talk to Twitter and say, hey, this thing happened, that thing happened. They could come in and clean stuff up, and they would do that blue check mark. It was sort of, you were vouched for. And it got to a point where the more and more I would do that, the more and more, well, what you've outlined doesn't violate our terms, our user terms. And if you were in a market, you may hear things that would offend you, and blah, blah, blah. And I eventually just decided I didn't want to go to that fucking market anymore. But this was, shit, been like 5 or 6 years now. Obama was still in office when I left. But that was more about just my own, this doesn't make me feel good anymore. I think I need to stop, kind of thing. None of it having anything to do with 99% of the people that I talked to and interacted with. It was great, and it was funny. That's the other thing that's my primary memory of the Warren Ellis Forum, was it was funny. And I wasn't capable of taking it seriously the way.
And your Twitter was hilarious.
This is Butt Stuff Werewolf. Yeah.
Butt Stuff Werewolf, that was his Twitter.
So Halloween, right, everybody, you change your name to Spooky Sexy Things. And one year I was out of ideas. I'm like, Spooky Sexy, Butt Stuff Werewolf. Changed my username to Butt Stuff Werewolf. Then Apple banned sex criminals on a slow news day. And I was in a Marlboro retreat, and I couldn't do press, so it was all happening via Twitter on breaks, right? And CNN and CNET and Wired, and any press that picked it up was picking up my Twitter feed as a primary source. And when media does that, they copy the embed code, so it takes the whole thing. So you can see this is real. And so I was on CNN and Wired and CNET and Butt Stuff Werewolf. So I was either really good at social media or really bad at it. I'm not entirely certain.
Nailed it.
So
Children are going to be really proud one day.
Kelly, you put out a lot of positive stuff, I think, through social media, and one thing that you've done online that's, I think, hugely impactful is #VisibleWomen. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of, I had this experience with a lot of very well-intentioned male colleagues who would come to me and say that they wanted to staff women on their books, but they just couldn't find any. No, you can laugh at that, ladies, it's cool. You're safe here. And it was like, I love you, you're dumb. And
I look at this whole pool of men. There's not a woman here.
yeah, and like I just don't know where to find women that can draw superheroes. Like, oh, we don't have that organ. It's so weird. I spent my entire life looking like a child, and I don't know what it is to have a power fantasy. So it was like, all right. I need a way to do this that isn't, embarrassing to my colleagues. So I was like, well, let's do this thing. So the idea was like, and it was just a spur of the moment thing. The first one was like, I'm going to take this day, and I'm just given today. If you are a woman penciler in comics, because that was where it was happening all the time. If you are a woman penciler in comics, tweet at me your portfolio, and I'm going to signal boost it, and I'll just do it all day. And then it became this thing, and so we sort of organized it a bit, and we expanded it and made it so it's now for any women that work in comics, illustration, or publication. And on that day, I don't do it myself anymore because it's huge, and also my work life is such I can't give over a whole day to this, but so we have somebody in the office who takes over my Twitter feed for the day and signal boosts as many as we can catch. But the best part of it is we then take all of those that we've retweeted and we put them on a spreadsheet, and we make that spreadsheet available to any hiring professional in the comic book or publishing industry for free. So there are usually around 300 names on it, and if you go to our website, which is milkfed.us, and you ask, there's a contact form there, and you request the Visible Women spreadsheet, we will send it to you, and not only will you get the most recent one, you will get a tab in that Excel file that has every previous one as well. And here's the bad news is we do this for free. It is not curated. It comes with an email that suggests divide this up in your office, and everybody take 20 portfolios to go through, pick your favorites, come together and see who you like. I cannot guarantee that these people are ready. I cannot guarantee that they will return your emails any more than I can guarantee that you will not exploit them. So we recommend that both of you have attorneys because you're big kids.
And appropriate expectations.
Yes.
Here, all of those women that you can't find, here's a list of 300 of them. We'll be back in 6 months with 300 more.
Yeah, and so we do this every 6 months, and it has traditionally been in August and February, but then somebody pointed out to me that by doing it in February, we were stepping on Black History Month, and there are some visibility projects focused on Black folks in February, and we didn't need to take that space, and so we pushed it to March, which happens to be Women's History Month, so it's perfect.
Great. I want to shift to creative process a little bit. I was, as I said, I read some interviews and I found some great quotes about creative process from you. Kelly Sue, you described your creative process as rocking back and forth, crying, and thinking I'm a fraud.
Yes, that's accurate.
And Matt said that it is physically painful to attempt to convert thought to language. So that's how it feels to be at the top of your creative game. Can you talk a little bit? People don't necessarily know what a comic writer does. Like a lot of times people will say, oh, so you like put the words in the bubbles? So can you talk a little bit about what you actually do? Like when you
completely rational, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you don't know
That's what you did.
until somebody spells it out.
So comic book writing is very much like, if you've ever read a teleplay or a screenplay, or a theatrical script. There are differences between each of those things, and I could go into detail on that, but I think that would be inappropriate here and probably very dull. But basically, it's the same idea. We tell the story to the artist, and then the artist interprets that story in pictures, and then that is how you get that. Okay, I believe that.
Yeah, no. You convert a story into drawable narrative moments, right? And understanding the difference between he gets up and closes the door cannot be shown in one image, right? It's two separate actions. He gets up, closes the door. So, okay, does he get up or does he close the door? What's more important? All right, well, closing the door is an important thing. All right, so he goes from sitting down to slamming the door. Slamming, that's a better word than closing, right? And slamming, you can draw that. Suddenly you have a thing. All right, slam the door. It's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a stage direction idea, but at the same time you're working with someone who's going to be able to draw and will ultimately be able to outdraw your hand. So give them the essentials that need to happen for the story to move forward moment to moment. It's a little bit like pre-conceptual editing, where you're trying to imagine all the little pieces of film you need to make a scene work.
Over the years, there are two basic styles of scripting. There's what's called full script, which is describes it as like page 1, panel 1. We're looking at
Big frame, the city of blah blah blah.
and then character and dialogue. And then there's called plot style or Marvel style, which is written in prose.
Each one we're going to open with the city and see so-and-so stand up and close the door.
But it is...
And that leaves it to the artist to decide what the panel is.
In film and television and theater, there are very set ways of doing this. Comic book scripting is very different. Everyone's style is wildly diverse. And so my style has evolved over the years where I am not an incredibly visual thinker, and so rather than trying to learn to think visually, I have sort of stepped away from that, and I try to evoke the images in the artist who is the visual thinker. So I write really more like an actor. I write what the character is, and what happens, obviously, but not so much what it looks like as what it feels like.
You write lots of adjectives.
I do.
I write lots of verbs, you write lots of adjectives.
I don't know if that's true because it pisses me off, so I don't like it.
Oh, okay, that's not good. You use more adjectives than me. You were very, very evocative, poetic, narrative style. Your scripts are very readable as pieces of fiction.
Yeah, I guess it's just as a person whose favorite writer is Hemingway, which that's a whole discourse. But you use a lot of adjectives. It's like fuck you.
I actually wrote an entire comic in fucking verse because I wanted to be more like her. So it's
No, I don't feel disrespected.
It's
just
called
defensive.
Odyssey. I think there's been images up
Yeah,
there.
there's a thing that goes through. Don't write a comic in verse. It's fucking dumb.
Are we allowed to curse up here? We didn't ask about that.
You already did.
Yeah, my permission.
Okay.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about process. Do you want to shift the Q&A or do you want to dig into process?
Yeah, I think we blew the whole time thing because we did like a really long intro. I would love to be able to do Q&A. I think that's what folks are here for, is to have their specific questions answered.
Let's do that. Do folks have questions? Are we gonna? have questions out there?
They don't really have to be easy questions, and I guess if they're process focused, that might be super good.
Ask really hard questions.
Right there, sir, in the striped shirt in the middle. Why don't you stand up, please?
So when it came to getting your own ideas off the ground, such as the sex criminals and Pretty Deadly, what did you find was the largest hurdle? Was it finding a partner to work with, a publisher that would take it on, finding the proper way to write the script that was true as to what you were trying to produce?
Did you hear that up in the top? Yes? No? Good.
I would say the question is when we moved to doing our independent projects, what was the biggest hurdle that we faced? And there's two things. Massive paper projects came first in his career, 1980. But for me, I will say that the biggest hurdle in everything that I do, I have two things that I face always and constantly, and I think most of you will find that it is the same. The biggest problems are courage and time. They are the two things that I find I run out of. You can't make more time. You can learn to develop more courage. But I think that is the fuel that's at the base of every creative act, is having the courage to fail, the courage to risk failing, the courage to ask questions you don't know the answers to. That's where we get creative, is when we are out of our safe spaces. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the hardest part of Pretty Deadly was my gut told me, this is a story told by a dead bunny to a butterfly. Go with that. And to not be like, everybody's gonna think you're crazy, or nobody's gonna be able to read it, or nobody's gonna like it. Like shutting down that part and just letting myself explore that, and what does that mean and why? That is where, and then once I understood Bunny and Butterfly, I understood the whole of Pretty Deadly. Right? And then having the courage to see that through the end. And every single issue of that book, I have a moment where I'm like, oh, I've blown it. I've written myself into a corner. I don't know how to get out. This is it. This is when the entire world finds the entire world, because I'm very grandiose. This is when the entire world finds out I'm a fraud. The coffee cup was empty. And Emma Rios actually gave me a great gift, because Emma said, at some point, like 3 issues into Pretty Deadly, I wrote to her and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've messed up. I'm so sorry that you got into business with me. This is terrible, and I'm going to get you out of it. By which I mean we're going to quit, and then I'm just going to send you money, right? And she wrote back to me, and Emma's actually a very soft-spoken Spanish woman, but we communicate mostly on email, and so I think of her as like a Russian dance instructor, you know? And she's like, oh, my sister, you do this every time. She's like, you go to your dark place, you're like, oh, I keep doing, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I don't hear from you, and then 3 days later, you rise like the Kraken. And so I now have a tattoo of a Kraken on my back, because it helps me contextualize. Getting lost and getting afraid is a vital part of my process. I will die, and I always manage to find my way out.
Is that when you write down? That's wisdom right there. That's a lot of wisdom right there. Is that when you write down on the card, they figure it out? Is that what that part is?
Well, it's the day that you have to figure out what that means.
Wow.
That's where you realize you know, it's like you loop
Screwed
yourself
more.
That's what I
badly.
should do, is put on my calendar 3 days from that freak out. I should write Kraken Day.
That's also really the theme of your Captain Marvel work, and that was, seeing the Captain Marvel movie was so amazing, because I obviously was inspired by your work, but seeing that was a central theme of the movie. Can you talk about that just a bit?
Yeah, the thing that's most important to me about Captain Marvel, and like, since the film came out, and I was lucky enough, I got to work on the film. I worked on the film for about a year, and had a tremendous experience, a really, really wonderful experience with Marvel Studios. I went into it very defensive, like, oh yeah, you want to put my name on it, but you're not going to actually listen to me, it's not nerd cred. And then, and I felt very heard, and that was super cool and wildly unexpected. I don't know what, I guess I just got kind of cynical about Hollywood. But the thing that's been most important to me about Captain Marvel is, since then, when I've done public appearances, the number of little girls that are in my line. And I will ask them, you know, did you see the movie? Let's talk about the movie. And like, because that's why they're there, right? And so like, what was your favorite part of the movie? And most of them like will mention the flirkin, which, you know, fair. And this is the cat that has tentacles inside of it, which is pretty cool. And then, but then, when I ask them what was their favorite part of the movie, they will tell me, almost to a girl, that it's the showdown in the end, when Jan Rog says, like, all right, this is it, this is what we've trained for, you know, you're gonna put the powers away, and we're gonna mano a mano, and when you can beat me by hand without your powers, that's when we're gonna know you're ready. And she just blasts him and says, I have nothing to prove to you, right? And that is this moment that is so powerful, it's so transformative, because what it says, and what these 10-year-old girls understand is, I do not have to meet you on a plane of your ability. I do not have to hide my gifts. I do not need to dance backwards with one hand tied behind my back, right? That I can come with everything I have, and I can bring my gifts, and I can meet you on my feet, and my gifts count. And that, if she worked on Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers, if that is the first line in my obituary, and it will be, I'm cool with it.
We kind of have 11 seconds left. So, quick question and a quick answer. We need to stay on budget. Yes, you're right here.
Who are your favorite artists to work with?
Favorite artists to work with?
They can't do that. What kid do you like the most?
There you go.
Oh my god. Oh my god. They're all perfect and wonderful. To a person. Flawless gods and goddesses each. To bless us.
We really do have favorites, and they know who they are.
Even the ones who sit in the corner and drool, that's my favorite kid. But
That's me.
touche. Everybody, please give them a big hand. Thank you to Scott.